Hello, MyoBeat community. Last time I got a tad controversial by discussing the resemblance between intermittent fasting diets and dangerous eating disorders. Today, I'm going to riff more on my approach to nutrition. Now, first of all, I'm just going to start out by riffing on the video I did last time. So I was referring to the dangers of forced intermittent fasting diets, okay? I know that technically we all fast while we sleep. Duh. I mean, breakfast, break, fast. I mean, yeah, of course, you're always gonna fast at some point during the day. So what I was referring to there as something potentially dangerous mentally and physically is the kind of intermittent fasting diets that are very forced. They feel restrictive. The kind that make you feel like, oh God, I really want to eat, I'm tired. Sometimes when you're very hungry, your blood sugar drops and you can even start trembling a bit. But if you feel the need to continue fasting even after you're having some obvious physical signs that your body wants food and mental signs to the point where your food cravings are actually distracting you, but then you continue thinking, no, I'm on this intermittent fasting diet. I have to fast for 16 hours. I only have an 8-hour eating window. I can only do that. That's the kind of fasting I was referring to as being dangerous. Or the other form of intermittent fasting that some people do is when they pick like one day of the week to not eat for 24 straight hours. Again, that is risky, and I know it depends on a whole lot of things, just like anything else. I mean, everything regarding your body and your mental health, it always depends, okay? There are no 100% of the time this is good and 100% of the time this is bad. Everything has its sort of pros and cons depending on the context, depending on the person and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm really referring to the fact the restriction mentality can be very dangerous. It can do a lot to harm your mental and physical health. So instead, I don't really like thinking in terms of diets at all, really. I think more in terms of functional nutrition. So my approach to nutrition is to combine the logic of sports nutrition with the freedom of intuitive eating. So think of it something like intuitive sports nutrition. Meaning, on the sports nutrition side, athletes do have to have some conscientious awareness about what they eat. For example, it is a good idea if you're a strength athlete to eat a lot more protein than the average person. To eat protein a couple hours before your workout and then within an hour of finishing your workout. For any athlete, you should fill up mainly on nutritious foods. Any athlete who wants to develop good performance should limit junk food, and it's pretty easy to tell when something is junk food, really. In this day and age, I think most of us are pretty much aware when something is obviously junk foody. That's the kind of stuff that if you're any type of performer, whether an athlete, a musician, dancer, actor, a person who uses their body regularly, that can also be if you have a physical job, then yes, you do need to be mindful of your nutrition. Sometimes you refer to that as mindful eating. Whereas intuitive eating is a lot more like free. So, what intuitive eating has you do, now I'm just going to explain it very briefly and very generally right now because intuitive eating can be its own book. There are books written about that, literally, and there are books about sports nutrition. So I'm just referring very generally to these things. In intuitive eating, you really listen to your body. If you're having certain cravings, you just let yourself go with them, basically. You don't restrict yourself at all. And the idea behind intuitive eating is that if you totally follow your body's intuition with dedication, your body will tell you what it needs. Your body is pretty smart about letting you know what it wants and needs. So if you have a very strong craving for something, there is a reason for that. So even if you are craving a junk food, like let's say a brownie, that could be an indication that your body does need more carbohydrates ASAP. So for example, if you're doing workouts that deplete your glycogen stores, glycogen is a storage carbohydrate, You burn through a lot of that when you're doing any type of cardiorespiratory endurance training. Also, when you use a glycolytic system, see, glycogen, that's the energy system that your body uses when you do things that are very intense for about 1 to 3 minutes in length. That uses a glycolytic system. So that's, for example, if you're doing weightlifting like sets of 10 through 12, like 400 meter or 800 meter sprints, things like that are a very intensive effort for about 1 to 3 minutes. That glycolytic system burns a lot of carbohydrates. So if you do a lot of training like that, you can start craving a lot of sugary foods with carbohydrates because your body is burning through a lot of carbs and your body is asking you for more carbs to replenish those stores. So that's why for certain types of people, following those like paleo and keto diets can be very detrimental, because also Atkins or any kind of low carb diet, because if you're doing workouts that use a lot of carbohydrates as fuel, you can actually be depleting your body's glycogen stores and leaving yourself in a state of constant fatigue, muscle pain, and aches. I mean, at one point I actually tried to go lower carb. I kind of tried to follow a paleo sort of thing, and I felt that way a lot. I felt very tired. I could feel, there's a particular feeling that you have when your muscles are depleted of glycogen. It's like when you're working out, you go like, oh yeah, mind over matter, I'm gonna push myself, yeah. But then in your everyday life, you're just like, wow, I can feel my muscles being just plain tired. And there's a little bit of a difference. Muscle soreness is more like a tension and pain. Muscle fatigue is a little different. Your muscles can be tired without necessarily being sore. And if you have that feeling like you just feel kind of sluggish and weak, that can be a sign that you need more glycogen, like replenish your glycogen stores. So that can be a time when it's actually better to just listen to your body's intuition. Let's say if you're craving brownies and you're like, okay, my body is asking me for more carbs. But if you're athletic or a performer and you know you need to be conscientious about whole food nutrition, you know that eating a whole tray of brownies isn't going to be a good idea right now, and you know that that's going to give you a big stomach ache and gas, it'll make you feel worse afterwards, then you can interpret, okay, my body wants more carbs, so maybe you can eat something like fruit or whole grains, or something else that gives your body what it's asking for, but that you know is objectively more nutritious for you. So that's one way you can combine the principles of intuitive eating, listening to your body's intuition, what's my body asking me for, with the logic of sport and performance nutrition. Another way is that this is what I talk about in the MyoBeat advanced training section. The advanced training is more when we get into like maximizing your mind and body power, whereas the foundational courses that are just 2-week courses with 10 to 20 minutes a day of practicing, those are more for building a general sense of mind-body awareness. But in the advanced training section, that's when I talk more about sport nutrition for performance. And in that, I actually say that understand that those macronutrient ranges are in fact ranges. So sometimes athletes or fitness enthusiasts can get really into like, oh, I need to eat exactly this amount per day. Oh, I need to eat exactly 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. I need to eat exactly 40% carbohydrates, 30% calories from fat, and 30% protein, and get really into like nutrition tracking and making everything exact. Like realistically, it doesn't actually work that way. I mean, your body doesn't super differentiate between if you eat like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight versus like 0.9 grams or 1.1 grams per pound. I mean, those are ranges. Now you'll see in the NSCA, as National Strength and Conditioning Association, where I got certified as a strength and conditioning specialist, even their guidelines show, okay, macronutrients are ranges. Like strength athletes aim for anywhere between 1.4 to 1.7, even 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Strength athletes aim for like 5 or 6 grams of carbs per kilo of body weight. Endurance athletes, 8 to 10 grams of carbs per kilo. You can see how it's always a range. So that's something very important to understand, that it is in fact a range. Okay, so don't get so caught up on precise numbers, because your body isn't quite as picky as you might think that it is. Another way to combine intuition with logic is to be very consciously aware of your mental cravings. Sometimes you don't have your stomach growling, so you don't think that you're hungry, but you might really be craving food. You know, and that happens when you really want to eat psychologically, but your stomach isn't growling at all. You actually feel, neutral in your stomach, satiated. And some people, in this day and age, society is very critical. Some people will get self-critical. It's like, well, I must be very weak-minded if I'm craving food even though I'm not physically hungry. Some people really beat themselves up for eating without being physically hungry. Understand that actually mental hunger cues are just as valid as physical ones. So for people who use their bodies a lot, that's athletes, performing artists, people with physical jobs, a lot of the time your physical hunger cues actually are not enough. Like if you only ate according to when your stomach is growling, you actually would not end up eating enough. Like for myself, that is very true. I actually don't get a ton of physical hunger cues, but I get a lot of the mental hunger. So understand that your mind also craves nutrition just as your body does. So mental hunger cues are legit and you should listen to them. But you should also interpret why you might be craving a certain thing. Like earlier I gave the example of if you're craving cookies and brownies, that could just be your body asking you for more carbs. So if you think that you should not eat so much junk food, you can eat a more nutritious version that gives you the same nutrient. Like for me personally, recently I realized that my body was asking me for more protein because I tended to have a lot of food cravings at night. I was just, thinking it through, it really would be better if I balance out my food intake more evenly throughout the day. Like a lot of people are just not that hungry in the morning. Like I'm one of them. I'm not particularly hungry in the morning, and it's very common that if you don't eat much in the first half of the day, then you'll crave more in the second half of the day, which is another reason why I think forced intermittent fasting diets are pretty much bullshitty, because realistically that's what a lot of people end up doing. Like if you wait till you're really starving yourself, your body in starvation mode before you eat, you are very likely to have a big binge out episode. So it could be very beneficial, especially for whenever you use your body throughout your day, you should fuel up throughout your day. So fitness enthusiasts who work non-physical jobs, often they'll have a specific workout period. Like, okay, this hour or hour, maybe 2 hours, however long you have, that's your time when you work out, but otherwise you're sedentary. That's a time where, okay, maybe I can see how it could be reasonable to have more a shorter eating window in your day. But if you use your body constantly throughout your day, that's like performing artists, you tend to do some movement more consistently, or people with physical jobs, if you're in agriculture or construction. Or if you are an athlete, but let's say your training is distributed 2 a days, a session in the morning and a session in the afternoon or evening. Those are all times when it's more beneficial to you to eat smaller meals more consistently. You could eat 5 or 6 small meals per day, or 3 meals a day with little snacks in between. Just feed your body more consistently, because it can be kind of frustrating if you are just craving a ton of food at night before bed. You're like, what's with this? Why is it that every single night I just want to eat a lot? That's a hint that it's probably a good idea to eat more in the earlier part of the day and actually distribute your nutritional intake. It also helps with your digestive system if you don't overwhelm your system with a ton of food at once. Generally, the human body doesn't like being overwhelmed with a huge flood of one thing all at once. Generally, the body likes things to be more balanced and distributed. So, giving yourself consistent nutritional energy throughout your day without getting either super hungry or super bloated and full is a pretty good plan to keep consistent energy and avoid feelings like gas and indigestion or extreme hunger. For me personally, I realized that my food cravings at night had to do a lot with the fact that I should eat more protein earlier in the day, so then I decided to listen to that and give my body more protein right away for breakfast. So those are all things to pay attention to. And then when I started doing that, I did notice that I didn't have as heavy of food cravings at night. So sometimes it's not even that you need to eat larger quantities. Sometimes your body is asking you for a specific nutrient. A lot of people these days demonize carbohydrates, is what the diet industry is into these days, the whole low carb mania. So a lot of people these days eat not enough carbohydrates. So just something to be aware of is that there are times when it is reasonable to eat less of a certain nutrient, but you don't necessarily have to just because it works for one type of person. It can work for them just for a one type of goal that is for a limited period, like prepare for a powerlifting competition. I'm preparing for a powerlifting meet now. That's a time when it's reasonable to spend maybe like a couple months eating less carbs and more protein because it's a very anaerobic type of training. But you don't have to go with what everyone else does or with what the other people in your inner circle do or with what your favorite influencer does. I mean, really, listen to your own body and mind. That is the pinnacle principle of what I'm trying to teach with MyoBeat, because it is mainly a somatic program more so than it is a fitness program. The advanced training section has more like athletic movements where you push your mental and physical limits. But otherwise, the foundational courses that are those 2 weeks, 10 to 20 minutes a day, those are really geared towards the mind-body connection because you do need a foundation. You really can't reach your full potential unless you have a foundation where you can recognize and respect the way that your mental and physical worlds are constantly influencing each other, feeding off each other, and teaching each other. So if one of them suffers, they both suffer. Okay, so you really shouldn't be driving yourself mentally crazy with neglecting your food cravings just because you want to meet a certain kind of physical goal. Really, all of your goals should allow your mind and body to work in harmony. If you feel like you are punishing one of them to help the other one progress, then that means you really do need to adjust your goals. And that's something that I work with people on when they request one-on-one personal coaching with me, because I have all the courses in the MyoBeat app, but the personal coaching is where we can work together on your specific goals and look at what kinds of adjustments you can make with the way you use your body and the way that your mindset is being reflected in your body's sensations and actions, and we can just examine all of that a lot more deeply and in detail for you. So that is what I wanted to tell you for today. The way that your utmost mission in life should be harmony with your own body, mind, and just to live your own life. Don't give in to all the pressure to go with the trends and do what some others do. Really, listen to your own body and mind and do what you need to do for yourself. Thank you.